I make a motion to approve the minutes from December 12th, 2022.
I second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, audit results.
All right, Amber, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you here. Okay, Amber, thanks for joining us. You have a few of the school board members here in attendance here in our Finance Facilities Committee. So I'll let you kind of take over and walk us through. We have the committee members have a copy of the audit report. And if you want us to walk through any major highlights, answer any questions you might have, if there's anything bad that you'd like to share with the board here, I encourage you to share that with them now. If everything's okay, you can let them know that too. So I'll turn it over to you here, okay?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amber Ebert from Hawkins Ash, and I will be presenting the 2022 financials. So I'll just kind of go through the financial report, just kind of section by section, and mention anything I feel is worth mentioning. So to start, pages 3 to 5 are the auditor's report. And this year we issued a clean audit report, which is the best opinion that can be achieved. And then pages 6 through 7 or 6 through 14 are the management discussion and analysis. So in this, the first few pages are just, I guess, some boilerplate template, just mentioning what like fund financial statements are, what the district-wide statements are. And then we get to page 9, which this, I'm just going to mention that the total assets increased mostly due to an increase in cash and investments, and then an increase in the WRS net pension. And then there was an increase in deferred outflows, which this is due to WRS pension. And then there was a decrease in total liabilities, which is due to as debt getting paid off. And then there's an increase in deferred inflows, which is also due to WRS pension, with an overall net position increase of about 15% from last year. Page 10 through 12 just shows some more detail about the revenue and expenses. So with some charts and just more detail. So overall, the revenue increased about 6% from last year, and the expenses decreased about 2% from last year. And then pages 13 through 14 just mentioned the capital assets and the long-term debt. So capital assets decreased overall since the depreciation has been increasing. And then the long-term debt has been decreasing due to bonds being paid off and then the notes payable being completely paid off. And then also the WRS remains an asset again this year. So let me get to page 15, which is the statement of net position. So this year with WRS being an asset, it was funded at 106%. And then also the OPEB pension is fully funded, and then the OPEB health is not fully funded, but together those two kind of outweigh each other.
So Amber, I'm just going to comment on that. So when we're going through this with our actuary, we have our post-employment benefits that we pay to select employees, mostly our teachers, that some of them could get $70,000 in a premium-only HRA that can be used in a tax-free manner to buy health insurance once they retire. Or they can get $70,000 as a 403B. And because one is a health product and one is a 403B cash kind of, equivalent, we do two separate measurements, and one has one liability number, one has a different liability number, and you add it up, and that's our net liability. And when you combine both together with the total assets we have aside, one liability might say, look, you look underfunded, while the other says, hey, you're overfunded. When you just add them together, we're good. So I wanted to clarify that, because even to me, it doesn't make total sense why we have to value them the way we do, but that's all good. The big picture is okay.
Yep. And actually, you are the only client I have that actually has a fully funded OPEB pension. So that's actually kind of interesting to see.
Good job, Tom. Hey, yeah. Joel did that. That's not good. He's the treasurer.
Right.
Good job, Sean.
So then with page 16 is the statement of activities. On this one, the largest amounts are related to regular instruction and special instruction. And then mostly due to the federal and state funding, and then also the business services due to charges for services. And then the total change in that position is an increase of about 10.8 million from last year. We get to page 17 through 18, which are the fund statements. So overall, the general fund balance shows a 34.2% of current year expenses, which is excellent. We recommend that our clients have at least 20%, so you guys are sitting very good with that. Your instruction is about close to 56% of total expenses, which is pretty average for what most of our clients have. And then for your general fund, there was an increase of fund balance from about up 2.5 million from last year. The debt service had a decrease in fund balance of about 1.7 million from last year, and capital expansion was a decrease of about 855,000 from last year.
So Amber, I'm just gonna jump on your comments right there. So our general fund, which is 110, we increased our fund balance there by 2.5 million. But if you'll recall, we designated $1 million of that for certain expenses in this current year. We added cameras to our stop arm cameras onto many of our school buses. We did a stipend for our teachers back in July and August. We bought copy machines, some other one-time costs. So of that 2.5 million, we're spending some of that down in the current year. We spent down $1.7 million in our Fund 39, our long-term debt fund balance, because we had money there, and we paid off a significant chunk, almost 2 extra additional years of debt, which we'll look to do again in April or May. Okay, I'm all done there, Amber.
Okay, perfect. And then page 19 is just our reconciliation of change in fund balance to the change in net assets. So it's mostly just some GASB entries. Page 20 through 21 are the fiduciary funds, which now only consist of the employee benefit fund since the student activity fund is now gone. And this had an overall overall net position increase of about 172,000 from last year. And then we get to our notes, which are on pages 20 through 44. The first few pages are just kind of boilerplate, just kind of giving you some background on all of the different different areas of the audit. Then we get to note 2, which is just the cash. You can just kind of see where cash is sitting at. And then is when we get to the capital assets, which had an overall decrease of about 2.5 million from last year, which again is mostly due to more depreciation. Page 29 through 30 is the long-term debt, and this had an overall decrease of about 8 million from last year. And you can see that the bonds payable, I think that was what Tom had mentioned, quite a big chunk of the bonds payable being paid off. And then also the notes payable is now completely paid off. And the OPEB supplemental pension is now an asset instead of a liability, and WRS is continuing to be an asset. Pages 30 through 36 are the WRS footnote, which this is also a lot of boilerplate language that we get from WRS. But overall, the net asset is, wherever I can find it, is about $14.6 million.
Amber, is that specifically related to Mukwonago or to the entire WRS pension together, all districts, all entities combined?
That one is just just.
Amber, we lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. So that is just Mukwonago's. It is Mukwonago's percentage is probably like 1 or something. Each district has probably about like 0.1.
WRS as a whole is overfunded. Our share of that overfunding is 14 million.
Correct. Yep.
If we call them and ask for that 14 million, will they send it to us?
You can try, but
I gotcha. Okay, but the WRS is healthy and that's good.
yes.
Okay.
And then next is the OPEB supplemental pension, which this has an overall asset of about 1.2 million. And this again is just kind of boilerplate language as we follow what.
Are you on page 39 right now?
Between 36 and 38.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And then I'll just kind of skip over the interfund, which is on note 39, but that's just interfunds between all the funds, all the transfers. And then we get to OPEB healthcare, which is on pages 39 through 42. And this has a 1.8 million liability, which is why we say between your supplemental pension and your healthcare, you're pretty even between 1.2 million asset and 1.8 million liability.
Okay, so we're close to fully funded, but not quite, but just about.
Close, yep.
Okay.
Page, I'll kind of skip over 43 as well. This just kind of shows your overall, like your total fund balances in the governmental activities and just the overall funds and what the purpose is for. And then we get to the last page of the notes, page 44, which is your dental self-insurance footnote. And this is just showing that at the year end, there was about $280,000 in ending liability balance for the self-insurance. Now we'll skip to page 45, which is the original and final budget amounts. So the actual revenues were about 2 million larger than your final budget amounts. And then your actual expenditures were about 597,000 less than your final budget amounts, which this is exactly what you want to see, because if it were the opposite, it would lead to a non-compliance. So you want to keep your actual budget lower than your final budget. Page 46 just shows what areas of the expenditure were in excess of the budget, but again, that the individual areas don't really matter as long as the overall is under. Page 47 just shows a breakdown throughout all of the years of WRS. And this, we kind of did it a little bit different this year since WRS is actually reported, I guess, technically 6 months behind due to when the school district year end is and versus the WRS year end. So you can see the top half shows pension plan fiscal year from 2014 through 2021, but the district fiscal year is 2015 through 2022, but it's the bottom line equals the bottom line and kind of so on and so forth from there. 48 and 49 just show the OPEB supplemental pension and then the OPEB healthcare throughout the years. Pages 50 through 51 show the non-major funds. So overall, the Special Revenue Trust Fund had an increase in fund balance of about 44,000 from prior year. The food service had an increase of about 793,000, which is mostly due to the service, the food service grants, and then also lunch being 100% covered again. The community service had a decrease in fund balance of about 2,000, and then the long-term capital improvement had an increase of about 1 million. And then page 53 is a listing of all of your federal awards, which I believe when I looked was about an increase of about 3 million from last year. So that's really cool to see with all of the COVID grants and everything. And then page 54 is your state assistance. And then the 55 through 60 are just kind of our notes that we are required, I guess, to mention, just like the single audit guidelines and everything. And then we get to page 61 through 62, which are our findings. And the only finding we have is the preparation of financial statements, which is probably going to continue to be there. It's very, very common on all of our clients. And then lastly is
If
the,
I could just talk out
sure,
loud, so when you have a finding that's obviously something you're trying to draw the school board's attention to, generally speaking, or, you know, you're just trying to draw attention to whoever reviews that, but in our case, our finding is that we are unable to prepare our own financial statements, which most school districts do not prepare their own statements, correct? We have a
correct.
firm like yours that will do those for us.
Yep. We actually, none of our clients even prepare their own, so I think it's probably pretty uncommon if a school district were to prepare their own. And it really is just almost easier for the auditor to do it, just because we have it kind of all linked in our software already as is. And then page 63 is just the summary of the findings and corrective action plan, which is just basically mentioning the if we could, well, how we would fix the preparation of financial statements finding. And then I'll skip over to the communication with those charged with governance letter quick, which is the little packet. So again, the first,
You guys a copy of that there, it is posted to, the website here, so it's like a 15-page, letter. Go ahead, Amber.
okay, so the first several pages are just, again, kind of boilerplate, just kind of mentioning everything that we are required to mention. If there were any uncorrected or corrected misstatements or any fraud, anything like that. But this year, we had a management advisory comment from last year, which is now resolved this year, which was the GASB 87 leases standard. So since that is implemented, there is now no management advisory comments. And then the only adjusting journal entry we have this year is actually one that we received from you. It's just that we received it after we had already imported the trial balance. So really, we didn't receive any entries. It's just kind of something we just include in our report anyway. But so you guys are sitting excellent. This is honestly one of the best clients that I have. Not gonna lie.
So, Amber, is there any, I guess, is there anything that you just saw in your audit that you want to draw our community or our board members' attention towards? Is everything okay? I guess I'll just ask it like that.
Yeah, everything looks great. Yeah, nothing to be concerned about or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Amber.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you. And Hawkins Ash would like to thank you for allowing us to be your auditors again.
All right. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
All right, you too. See ya.
Bye.
And Tom, you said that report's posted on the website
Yes,
for
it
the
is.
public
Yes,
to look at if they want.
So I'll just quickly I'll go to our website here, so anybody that's watching from home, no, I'm sorry, I'm not mic'd up, I apologize. Under departments, business services, under 2122 here, I'm sorry, it's not posted here, but it will be tomorrow, it should have been, but it will be right here, our previous, audits are posted here. It'll be posted under 2122 budget. I apologize that it's not. You know, it is. It's listed under
Okay.
2223. It needs to be dropped down to here because
Okay.
2223 audit is not done yet. But we will relabel this and get this into the right spot. But yes, it is there for the community to see.
Okay, anything else with the audit or moving on to St. James lease?
I think we can move on to the St. James lease. Okay, so we have permission from St. James to extend our lease by another year under the same terms that we currently have. So everything's the same, the cost, the price, everything. So we have permission from the board, obviously, to be there this year, and the original lease was going to expire on June 15th, but now we can stay another year. So really just looking for permission from the board to extend this lease here, and it starts with your recommendation here from this committee. So we're hoping that you would let us stay at St. James because we still don't have a long-term solution for SOAR.
Do we need a motion to take it to the full board?
Yeah, a recommendation of the board that we
I'll make a
extend our
motion,
lease.
we take the St. James lease to the full board.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, then. The next thing that we had then was the Connect Consortium Agreement with the Muskego Norway School District. So Dustin Lehman is our College and Career Readiness Coordinator. His counterpart in Muskego is Jim Mishlag, who's a district resident, and they have a good agreement to work together to consolidate and I guess to house our grant efforts with, excuse me, I gotta flip to it to get the name of the grants here. They receive a certain number of dollars for every student who receives an industry certified recognition that's in the skilled trade areas. So I believe it's approximately $1,000 per student. And those dollars for every student that has those industry recognized certifications, we receive money from this particular grant. In the past, WCTC has served as like a consortium where a lot of school districts participate. They manage the grant, and then once our students receive their industry certifications, WCTC gets a cut of the money for managing the grant, and then we get what's left. The vast majority of students who receive this industry recognized credits are really between Mukwonago and Muskego. So given the size of the grant, Muskego and Mukwonago feels that we can manage this grant better on our own and doing a consortium just between our two school districts. And therefore, we don't have to forego any of the grant by having a third party or somebody else write the grant or manage the grant. We will do that ourselves and therefore retain a greater part of the grant money once we receive it. So this is really just kind of cutting a cost that was ultimately going to WCTC, eliminating that cost, and kind of just removing the middleman, so to speak. At one point in time, it made sense for our district. And if you have a very small number of kids receiving these recognitions or these certifications, that consortium makes sense. But the scale that our two districts are operating on right now, it financially makes more sense to manage the grant ourselves and to keep the lion's share of the money for that. So Muskego School Board approved this, I think, on January 16th. And what we're looking for right now is simply to approve the resolution that's included here, or to recommend to the school board that we approve this resolution. And then there's a draft agreement that we will sign, and we'll have a more concrete budget that we'll present to you. If you guys think you're okay with it, then we sign it. But there's no reason, I guess, really not to do this. Okay?
I'd like to make a recommendation that we move this to the full board for approval.
Okay.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that'll work out well for both districts. I think we're going to be in a great spot.
What's the projected profit's not the right word.
Yeah, no.
How much more are we gonna make?
So let's see here. We received just over $600 in funding for a student, and now that'll be the full $1,100.
Oh.
So it'll be an additional $500 per student that receives their industry certified recognitions.
We
And
had
that-
120 something? Or is that-
175, but that was for both schools, right?
From both school districts. I'm not sure how many of those are ours, but obviously it's a somewhat significant amount of those students. So yeah, it's several tens of thousands. It's enough to want to do this in-house.
And Dustin's gonna be managing this?
So in the agreement, Muskego is going to hire a administrative assistant, and we are going to prorate the share of that person to do the work here. We will be better off managing this on our own with their employee. Once we receive our money, they'll take a portion of it to pay for that individual, and then we keep what's left, and we'll be better off.
Okay.
Policy updates.
Okay, we have 3 policy updates that we're bringing to you tonight. So first one, policy 8146, is notification of educational options. So there's a new law that came into play somewhat recently here, saying that we have to publish a Class 1 notice, which is a one-time notice. Class 2 notice is something that gets published twice in succession in consecutive weeks. A Class 1 notice is just a one-time notification. And we need to put all educational options available to students in our district who reside within our district. So not just what options are in the MASD, but private school options, charter school options, and then we put our most recent report card scores that are in there. So this revision is really just to make sure that we're in compliance with that law. Second policy then is 8740. It's protection of district funds. So this policy is being revised. Once upon a time, districts were required to have bonds on people like Sean or myself in the event that we did something really stupid and had a bad audit report, then you'd want those bonds needed to be there. So in lieu, now almost no districts do bonding anymore. They simply just buy insurance, and the insurance policy will, if there's errors in omission or fraudulent activity, that insurance will then make the school district whole if somebody did something wrong. Okay, so this policy is being revised to say that insurance policies are just as good as bonding. And it's just more or less an update in policy to reflect current times. And then the last policy then is 7440.01. It's for video surveillance and electronic monitoring. So as you know, we have a lot of cameras in our school district, on our school buses. And so this is just a brief update to our policy here to kind of mostly update just a little bit of verbiage there, nothing material is really taking place here. It's just a brief update there. Nothing significant is really changing. So, do you have any questions on any of those?
I do not.
Okay. I always forget, Sean, do they need to?
Push that to the board.
Right, so those are
What's that?
changes to the board, additions, and so you would recommend approval to the full board.
All right, I'll make a motion that we take these 3 policies to the full board for approval.
I second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're hitting the home stretch here, guys. Getting there.
Getting there.
Record time.
And Tom gets to talk about budget.
I saw the
Yeah,
meetings.
I wasn't gonna let you guys get out here.
Is Tom gonna be tonight?
I just want to highlight a couple of things here. So I'm going to start with budget assumptions first. I'm going to bring those up on the screen to show you how I built our budget. What assumptions did I use? Okay, so there's a number of things that we have to, assume at this time. We are going into the first year of a biennial budget. The second year is way easier to know what's coming because you know what's in the biennial budget. And I did print off a copy of the most recent biennial budget, so you guys have a copy. And I just want to highlight a couple of things here as we go through that. Okay, so the first thing, I have some things highlighted in green. I just need my markup copy. All right. So the first thing that we need to assume here is how many students are we going to have? And we don't really have a crystal ball where we can look into the third Friday of September, so we have to make assumptions. For summer school membership, we had 103 students 2 years ago. We had 107 students last year, 107 FTE. So we have typically always just said our summer school FTE is going to remain constant. So no change there. We are also just temporarily, and I'll take feedback on this one here, we are going to hold our third Friday FTE and say there's no change. Now, we have some evidence through our long-range facility planning. We've been told that in the outlook up to 2035, we're looking to add 25 students per year. There will be some pluses and some minuses along the way. It's not going to go linear between now and then. But again, even that is just an estimate. So we did lose a number of students from 2021-22 into the current school year. So we can make an assumption. We have to make an assumption of how many students we're going to have. I'm going to present the budget on the next topic here, and that'll be all we really have for the night for the most part. But the budget I'm going to present shows a no student increase. Okay.
And then real quick, I'm sorry, Tom,
Yeah.
but the summer school membership, obviously we have many more than 107 students attending summer school. We have over 1,000, but that's a full-time equivalent.
Yeah.
So those 1,200 or 1,400 students attend part-time, very, very part-time, because it's a few weeks or 6 weeks and then partial days. So full-time equivalent of 107, but obviously many more students attending summer school.
So I think it's 48,600 minutes is how many minutes a student will spend in a normal school year. We add up all the minutes our students are in our schools, divide by 48,600, and it's the equivalent of 107 FTE. Okay. All right. Last assumption here in terms of headcount then is our independent charter schools. So 2 years ago, this was the first year, 21-22 was the first year that we had independent charter schools as an option, and we had 6.6 FTE of kids who lived in Mukwonago and attended an independent charter school. This number jumped up to 17, so it grew by about 10. I'm going to make the assumption that our independent charter school is going to grow by another 10 students. So we are going to levy a tax from our community, and then we are going to pay that amount of taxation to the independent charter operator. So we kind of serve as the fiscal agent. So that's an example of where taxes can go up by no doing of the MASD. The more students that participate in the independent charter school program will drive that, drive taxes up. Okay.
So your assumption is that our attendance is actually membership is gonna grow by 10, but that 10 is gonna go
Somewhere else.
into charter.
So the revenue is going to go up. There's an offsetting expenditure that's going up too. It's kind of money in and money out. But I mean, independent charter schools are growing. There's a new one being built on 164, and when that school is up and running, those numbers might jump significantly. Time will tell. I don't know at this point. All right, then. So then we have our membership counts for open enrollment. So I am basically saying our open enrollment counts in and out will stay the same for regular ed and special ed. So I'll say for now the assumption is no changes. Okay, you can kind of see from year to year. There was a small dip from 21-22 into the current school year for open enroll in, and there was a slight jump for those in open enroll out for regular ed. We have our special ed count. So special ed open enroll in went from 38 FTE to 46.6, and then special ed open enroll out went from 19 to 27. We're basically just saying what we have today is what we'll have next year, and there will be a few changes, but they won't be material. What is material then, so in addition to the independent charter schools, is we have voucher schools. So these assumptions right here, if you take a look at the number of students that are in K-8, this number has grown by about 20 a year. So I'm just trying to limit the amount of data you have on the screen, but once upon a time it was at 18, and then 36, and then 54, and 73. It's growing by about 18 to 20 a year. So I'm going to say we're going to have a growth of 18 more students who are participating in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. Those students would be students who are receiving taxpayer dollars to attend St. Joe's, St. John's Lutheran, could be Catholic Memorial. There might be one or two others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they all participate in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. Then we have the same thing for special education. Excuse me, for students in grades 9-12. So it's been pretty consistent, but I just increased it by 2 FTE. Then our special needs scholarship programs, the same thing, but for students who are special ed. So the big thing is I'm increasing this K-8 number by another 20. So again, we will, our tax levy will go up because of this, and then we have an offsetting expense that goes up. So it's money in and money out. And I'll show you where this fits in, okay? The big assumption that I'm making right now, and this is where we got to start to lobby our legislators, is that I'm going to make an assumption that we are going to increase our revenues on a per student basis by $350. If we get a $350 increase per student, we'll be in a pretty good spot for a budget, okay? We've been frozen for 4 years in a row, and the state government has a significant surplus. So I do not think that this is a stretch. In some years, I'd say 350 is a stretch. This year, I say, no, it's not. I think 6 out of the last 8 years, we've gotten no raise, so we've really been living lean for a long time. So the budget I'm going to present here shortly is going to show what the $350 increase does for us, and if we don't get it and if we do get it, okay? All right, so if funding goes up for our students, and typically what's going to happen is the amount of money we pay to our voucher partners is also going to go up. So I've increased our voucher school funding, the amount we pay to them for each FTE they have, by $150 per student. The special education, that we have two categorical aids that I want to highlight that are significant for us. All right, one is the per pupil categorical aid. All right, and that's $742. Whether state government can really give us funding in one of two areas. They can give it to us in our per member revenue limit, which is $10,000, or they can give it to us in the $742. This number right here, this $742, every district gets that number. So whether you go to Nicolay or Franklin or Rhinelander or what, it doesn't matter. Every district gets $742 per student. This money comes directly to us. There is no taxpayer share in this. So if they're going to give us money, I guess it ultimately doesn't matter if it's one or the other, but the funding gap we have between ourselves and some of our local neighbors here, like if we're going to close it, then the money, if we get $200 here, well, they got $200 there as well. So there's still a funding gap. Still the lowest. So this number right here, they can increase this number perhaps for just those at the bottom. So if you're at $10,000 or in that neighborhood, they can raise the low revenue ceiling such that it lifts those at the bottom. Okay, but either way, 350 is 350. Our taxpayers would share in this. So this $350 increase, if that $10,000 is a 50-50 split between the state and the taxpayers, then that 350 increase would be also a split between the state and the taxpayers. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just highlight these here, and this is the start of my tertiary aid talk for the spring semester. I know you guys are looking forward to this here. I see a lot of head nodding. So what we're ultimately, I just want to highlight here is this secondary guaranteed rate value per member. Okay, so this current school year is at, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, is $1.722 million. And what the state is saying is that we guarantee every kid in the state is going to have $1.722 million worth of property value to support that student's education. Okay, if Mukwonago only has 50% of that number, okay, then for the vast majority of our state funding is going to be driven by this number here. If state government lifts this number from 1.722, say 10% increase to 1.894 million, state government is saying we will guarantee that every kid has at least $1.894 million to support their education. And if the school district doesn't contain that property wealth, the state will come in through equalization aid and pay it for that student. So that $10,000, that can be a 50-50 split, that can be a 60-40 split. It depends on the wealth of the district. The bigger the number here is, the bigger the share that state government is taking on. And we want them to make this number as big as possible. All right. Right now, if we just take a very middle of the road estimate for some of these guarantees, and I won't get into the details of this, we're going to say that equalization aid is actually going to decrease by about 8%. This is the most aid this current school year is $26.9 million. Next year, if things are just okay and the biennial budget is just okay, we'll have $24.769 million. So there will be a decrease there. And this is really kind of projecting a not so good scenario. I want to kind of start here so that if things get better, it's in our favor. It's in the favor of our taxpayers. And I don't see it getting worse than this. It can only get better. So I kind of paint a bad picture to begin with, and then we work to improve that. Okay? All right. So this is everything I highlighted there are the things I really just want to make an assumption by. The budget I'm about to show then is going to have an employee compensation increase of 4%, and that's an assumption by me. You guys can give me different direction there. Health insurance is going to reflect a 5% increase. In terms of other employee benefits, there's nothing new. There's no changes. Staffing levels are the same as the current school year, so we're not adding any programs. We're not subtracting any programs. And we really didn't make any changes to the budget. I do want to take a quick opportunity right now to take us to the state biennial budget, the most recent one we had. So I gave you, the finance committee members, a copy of this, and I'm just going to briefly go through this here so I can kind of show you what I think we need to lobby for in specifics. Okay, so this is 2021, Act 58 is the name of the 21-23 Wisconsin state budget. Okay, to show you, I'm going to go to the table of contents, and the first tab that I have there in orange for you guys is showing you all these various agencies. Okay, so you have the agriculture, trade, and consumer protection element of the state government. You have all these various boards, Children Abuse and Neglect Prevention Board. You have all these corrections, district attorney, so on and so forth. These are all the programs the state of Wisconsin funds. Okay, we are in public instruction. All right, so I just highlight this to show you how many, when the state budget season opens up and legislators start meeting with people, they're meeting with a lot of different people with a lot of different interests, and the budget is huge. The spectrum of topics is all over. The state is responsible for a lot of things. But the public instruction piece is one of the biggest ones that they fund. Okay, I'm just going to go to page 19 here real quick and draw your attention here. So there's a quick summary here of, hang with me here. For those of you, with your printout there, I think it's the purple tab then, it's going to show this table number 2, the summary of total funds appropriated by the agency. So really this is the 2021, this column here shows you the 2021 budgeted amount that they funded. And then it shows year 1 of the biennial budget, year 2 of the biennial budget, all right, and the total amount allocated in the biennial budget. All right, so you can kind of see how does the state government ultimately dole out their dollars and fund these various programs. The biggest one that you'll see is health services at $30 billion over the current biennium that we're in. All right. The next biggest one is public instruction at $16 billion. So state government is putting in just over $8 billion in 21-22, which was last year, and is increasing that amount to $8.229 billion. Okay. The last orange tab that I gave you then is where every one of these agencies and departments has its own budget, and I'm just going to skip ahead right now to the public instruction budget here, okay? So a quick summary here shows you what the 2-year budget is looking like, how much they're going to put into these 2 budget years, okay? And I'm just going to highlight 3 things for us right now. The first thing it spells out is general school aids and revenue limits. So this is our $10,016 per kid that we get. They're going to provide $6.4 billion in last school year and another $6.674 billion in the current school year for general aids. So with those 2 numbers in mind, I'm just going to scroll down here and show you. All right, so this is the 2-year snapshot that we're looking at here. And this is the $6.4 billion and the $6.6 billion. And there's a lot of different ways that the state government, I'm going to make this bigger for us, can give this money out. General school aids, or equalization aid as we call it in here, they put $5 billion in the pot to be distributed across 422 school districts based on how much property wealth they do or do not have, okay? And the following year is $5.2 billion. So they put in a couple, $200 million more. Okay? General school aids is the biggest thing we want them to do 2 things. 1, increase our revenue limit number. The second thing we want them to do is make sure they put enough money in there so property taxes are stable. What's happened in the past is that they have put money into this bucket because the prior year was $4.9 billion. They pushed it over $5 billion last year and $5.2 billion this year. And what you'll hear legislators say is it's a record investment in K-12. Yes, it is, but we have no new money to speak for here in this room from the state. The $10,000 is still the $10,000. When they put more money into those buckets, that 50-50 split, you know, they're just buying down the property taxes ultimately, saying, hey, we're giving you relief, taxpayers. So we don't get any more money. We're still at the bottom of with 10,000 funding per kid, but that amount is ultimately when there's increases there, it's just relieving taxpayers. There's no new money for us. Sure, it's a record investment, but none of that is really spendable increases.
It does help decrease property taxes.
And we like that.
Well, taxpayers like that, of course, but it doesn't help schools.
So we would like for them to increase our per member revenue limit and the commitment to general school aids. So if it's at 5.2 billion this year, they have a rainy day fund of over 6 or 7 billion. A couple $100 million would make it great. We're not asking for the world there. It's a very reasonable ask, in my opinion. The second thing I want to draw your attention to is this per pupil aid. This is the $742 per pupil that every school district gets for their kid. So there was $608 million last year. There's just slightly less, $607 million. This year, that's a significant part of our revenue as well. The last one then that I want to draw your attention to is the special education aid. There was $450 million last year, $468 million this year, and then it increased to $517 million. So it's a good increase there. For all the teachers and all the bus routes we get for students with special education needs, we get reimbursed a percentage of those costs 1 year later. Typically, we've been reimbursed in the 24 to 26 or 27% range. And then this year, it was this last school year, so 21-22, we are now getting reimbursed for those costs we had last year, and we're getting about 28% of those costs. We'd like to see state government give us about 35% of those costs because special ed costs are growing significantly. So we would like to see them put more money into the special education bucket. Okay, so that's how I see our efforts going in terms of asking our legislators of what are we looking for. Increase our per member revenue limit, increase general school aids along the way so property taxes aren't carrying the burden of those increases, and then also make a strong commitment to special education reimbursements. So on the following pages of that, Joel and Carolyn, I just highlighted a couple things there so you can see what those the general school aids increase, the per pupil categorical aid, and the special education. I can share that with other board members too, but that's the ask. That's what will help us. So state government gives us, there's all sorts of these categorical aids. Per pupil aid, supplemental per pupil aid, special education categorical aid, high cost, all these things. We do get a number of these, but they're not very big. So pupil transportation, we get about $145,000 a year, which is helpful, but obviously our revenue limit's bringing in $48 million. So we're trying to focus on those bigger pieces there, okay? So I'm trying to just define and create our vision for how do we go about asking for certain things here, and that's how I'm just kind of boiling it down to those things right there. So now I'm going to just jump ahead here real quickly here, and give me just a second. I'm going to open up the budget that I'd like to present that uses those assumptions that I've made. I'm just going to back up here real quick for a second. Secondary guaranteed value per member. This number that they put in the state, it's written into the state statutes, and this number, once they define, here's how much money we're willing to put aside into general aids, they will figure out this number such that the entire pot of money gets distributed across the entire state. The bigger this number, the better it is for all school districts because they're putting a bigger pot of money out there. So let's get more money per pupil, and let's get the state to pay for as much of that as they're comfortable doing. They have the money to do it. All right. So just bear with me for a second here. I'm going to pull up a couple of of budget examples here, or I should say just budget projections here. I'm going to show a 5-year budget, but we're really just focused on next year and maybe the year after. I really don't want to look at 3, 4, 5 years down the road because so much changes that it's hard enough to predict the next 12 months coming up that I don't really want to go too much further.
Question on your
Yes.
expenditures, you have in here like staffing levels. Is 4K figured into that? Because we are going to be,
Yeah, that's 4K is in what we're doing here. So I guess it wasn't a new program per se, because we have a 4K program. But yes, what I'm going to present here does show 4K with 2 full-time teachers, yes. So this is being accounted for here.
and other question, is there a difference in funding that we get for voucher versus charter when kids,
So we don't get any money for, we collect money on those kids' behalf, but then we give it to their school operators.
we give them the same, whether it doesn't matter which one it is, because I saw it was separated in here. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, no, there is a difference in how much money and why, I don't know, but a charter school gets a slightly different amount than what a choice student gets. It's not material. And we did look at this, by the way. So those, a charter school and a voucher school, they operate their school, but they don't provide busing. They don't provide special education necessarily. When you look at the amount of funding that they get on a per student basis, the cost of their students is almost identical to the cost of ours when you strip out our transportation costs and our special ed. So if we didn't have to do those things, if somebody says, you know, we get funded way more than the charter schools or way more than the the voucher schools, I say they don't have to operate transportation. That's $2.4 million, you know. Of course they're going to operate less than us because they don't have to provide the same level of service either through busing or through special education. So if we could make the playing field even for a second and compare our expenses when we take away transportation, special ed, we do it as good as they do. We do it as low as they do. So we are fiscally responsible. Did I answer your question there, Carolyn?
Yeah,
okay. All right. So here we go. I'm going to show there's 3 budgets on this page here. I'm going to start with the first one, which is our baseline budget. Okay. There is no increase in third Friday FTE. Okay, so this budget year here, our current year is where we are right now. Budget year is next school year. Then there's 5 years that come up beyond that. Okay. We're going to say that we had 4,615 kids this year. We'll have 4,615 FTE next year. No new dollars in the per pupil increase, and we're going to continue to get just $742 in per pupil categorical aids. If that happens, then your eyes are going to go to the green box there. We have a $1.9 million deficit. So that's if you have a 4% salary increase for your returning teachers, you have a 5% health insurance increase, transportation costs go up 3%, you have the same number of FTE last year and this year coming up, we're in the hole. And obviously you'll see that hole continues to grow. So if we were given no new money, which I don't think that's going to happen, I like to be realistic about this. There's good chatter amongst those who are in control of the legislative process and budgeting process that schools are going to be recognized and not ignored in this next biennial budget. So I feel good about where we're going. So just this $1.9 million deficit. So if I just if you stay on this line right here, this green line, last year, as we just talked about with Amber, we had a $2.5 million surplus. We brought in more revenues. We stayed under budget, but we decided, hey, we're going to use a little bit of this money in the current school year. So we're showing a small deficit, not a big deal, but going forward, a $1.9 million deficit, that's not good. So scenario 2 that I have on the screen right now is $350 increasing in year 1, and then another $200 in year 2, another $200 in years beyond that. Okay? So if we have that 10,000 becomes 10,350, we then have a $184,000 surplus. Year 2 looks like it's manageable if we get a $200 increase in that school year as well. So we're in a good spot if we get a $350 increase and a $200 increase the next year. Okay? This last scenario, I'm just trying to demonstrate that whether they give us $350 in our per pupil revenue limit amount or that $742 per pupil categorical aid, if that $742 becomes $1092, so that goes up $350, and then that amount goes up $200 the next year and $200 the next year. we're really in the same spot, just give or take a couple $1,000, that whether we get the money through per pupil categorical aids or we get the money through the revenue limit, just give us the money. Either one will work for us, okay? Does it make sense so far? Okay, then I have three more quick examples that I'll show, and I'll wrap this up. Okay, so again, I'm starting at our baseline, no new money. Those assumptions I said, 4% salaries, 5% health insurance, 3% transportation. We have a $1.9 million deficit. All right, if we lost 50 FTE for whatever reason, if Art doesn't sell enough houses, okay, we grow our deficit a little bit here down to 2.1 million. So less students means less money. But if we get the $350 increase on the per member revenue limit, okay, and we go from 30 to 35% reimbursement in the special education categorical aids, we basically break even. We're good to go. There's a little bit of a deficit the following year, but that can be managed. I'm not worried about that. But even with a decrease of students, if we can get 350 more per student and that 5% increase in the special ed categorical aid will be okay. So that's, you know, when you negotiate, I don't know, a lot of people negotiate in different ways. Well, they'll ask for something really high and then it gets countered really low and you meet somewhere in the middle. I'm going right to the middle immediately. This is how I see it, but we can choose our strategy differently. There are some groups out there that are saying that if you would have given us inflationary increases since 2010, 2012, we'd have $3,000 more per student. So we're going to ask for $3,000 per student. And I think that gets you laughed out of the room and you lose all credibility when you ask for something as ridiculously high as that. I've heard other entities ask for $800 per pupil in year one. The DPI budget proposal is asking for $350 in year one and another $650 in year two. That would be awesome. Well, that's a lot. So I like to focus on year one of getting at least $350 and then year two at least $200. So that's the first thing I'll recommend to the board that we ask for. Okay? All right, so that's a budget update as we start looking ahead now.
So can you go back up, Tom?
Yeah, which one you want, Sean?
The one that you think is the most reasonable one, so the middle one, I guess, there.
Yep.
So,
we would have a small surplus here, which,
and then 6,000 in the red the next year, which is certainly manageable, but one of the things that Tom briefly mentioned, and there will be a lot more discussion, is that the budget assumption about the salaries. So that's a 4% increase for all staff. And many years in the last 10, we'd be thrilled with 4%, but the consumer price index is, what was the number again, Tom, please? 8 even? 8 even? Okay. Just over, a hair over 8%. And so certainly some staff members are not going to be satisfied with 4%, and I completely get that. And I think that the Personnel Committee and this committee and the entire board really are going to have more discussions about that. Is that 4% the right amount? And then health insurance, Tom included a 5% increase, and we all know that health insurance is volatile. And so can we guarantee that we're at 5%? No. But we can certainly work toward that 5% increase. And if we talk about self-insurance, then it can be a less than 5%, possibly. And then maybe some of that savings in health insurance could go towards salaries. So a lot more discussion about that. But as you know, we've struggled finding staff. And one of the ways that we are able to compete with other higher paying districts to find staff is by increasing wages. And so to be determined. Those are big factors that we have more discussion to talk about.
So that's it for budget. You guys, are we good there? Yeah. Okay. The last thing then for the night is just a quick director's report. So I'm just going to talk about a couple high-level things here for those of us here or watching online. So I'm going to give it a budget update here. That's included in the packet here. So just as of January 22nd, which is yesterday, we are 50% done with the school year. So the first semester is over. We're starting the second semester when kids come back tomorrow. Generally speaking, 50% of your budget should be spent and 50% of it should remain here. So in fund, we have all of our funds, Fund 10, Fund 21, Fund 27. 10 and 27, again, are the most important because that's where our regular education educators are in Fund 10. In Fund 27, that's our special educators in special ed. And I'll zoom in to make this bigger. All right. Salaries and benefits, I've highlighted in yellow because that represents 75% of our entire budget. So we have 51.7% of our salaries budget left and 57% of our employee benefits budget here. Altogether in Fund 10, 60% of our budget still remains, so we're not trending in a bad direction and there's no alarms that we're sounding here. The other funds are here, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly talk about the biggest ones here. So Fund 27, we have 55% of our salaries budget remaining, 58% of our employee benefits budget remaining. Altogether, 55% of the budget remains. If you take a look like at Fund 39, we have $9.1 million of debt payments we're going to make this year. The fall payment is what's showed here. We'll make another $8.8 million of debt payments here on April 1st. Okay, so we have a lot of money unspent, but there's a plan for it and a timeline for it. So if you just go through this here, Fund 41, $1.4 million is there. A lot of that was the new parking lot at Rolling Hills, parking lot at Prairie View. Most of that money has been spent, so it's accounted for. And the fact that only 16% of that budget remains makes sense because that money is spent really July and August. Just go through this. If you have any questions, please let me know what they are. I won't spend any more time going through this, but this is just a high-level overview of all of our funds and the money that we set aside. There's no issues I'm reporting right now. Just to talk about salaries and benefits, so where are we and where are we going? We have 48.3% of our budget spent as of the 15th payroll. You can see in yellow are the 7 prior years and where we were at after the 15th payroll in those years and where we landed. So in Fund 10, this orange dot represents our 48.3% of our budget spent, and if it's going to follow the prior years, we're going to land exactly, we're going to spend that budget exactly at 100%. So we're not over budget, we're right on budget for salaries. For Fund 27, then, we are at 45% of our budget, just over 45% of our budget spent, and if our past predicts our future, we'll be at 97% here at the end of the school year, so we'll be 3% under budget here in Fund 27. So our budgets look fine. There's no alarm. Our salaries and benefits budget, we should be a few $100,000 under budget come the end of the school year. So no concerns there. Next thing in the director's report is a number of low-revenue school districts are signed on to a letter that I also signed on under my name. I was going to use Craig's name, but I didn't. I just used mine. What this, and I include this letter in the director's report, and what this is asking for is just, it's drawing attention to our legislators about the discrepancies in per-member revenue limits. So a school district in red like ours that in the 93-94 school year that was getting under $6,000 in funding in that year had this gap to the blue district, and that gap has persisted every single year. And so we have these funding gaps where taxes are low, but so is the student investment, okay? How can we close that gap? What this letter is ultimately stating is that if school districts get a $300 increase, that all districts add $300 to their value, that low revenue districts like ours would get 150% of that amount. So if everybody were to get the standard school district got $300, we would get $450, and we would start to close gaps on these other school districts over time. So it's nothing that would really, rectify itself immediately, but over time, if they got their increase at 100% of whatever the state budget allowed for, and then we got 150% of whatever they got, we would start to close our gaps here. I'm not sure that all legislators really understand how this works, and I don't blame them because not everyone understands tertiary aid quite like I do. That was a shout out there. I apologize, but it's pretty dry stuff. But it's And I think it's important for us to highlight that and give them a solution on how we can get the playing field even again, even if it takes a decade. I think this is a legitimate proposal, and this will be sent out to all legislators in the state. So I hope they get the chance to take a look at this. And some of the districts that signed it: Oak Creek, Kaukauna, Sheboygan Falls. It's a hell of a good school district there. So yeah, there's a number of districts that signed on here, and I added ours there. So, all right. Last thing then I just wanted to highlight in the director's report here is I'm sharing a letter here that was sent to us by a parent whose 2 sons participated in our SHIELD internship with our IT department. And the mom just says that she's really proud of the experience that they had. So she had, for both of the boys, their positions at the MASD IT help desk were their first employment roles, and as much as my husband and I tried to instill work ethic in them, it isn't until they get that first job do they really learn how to be a good employee. Through their work experience with the MASD help desk, they learn how to be good employees, so much so that both have been nominated for Employee of the Year in their IT help desk roles at their respective universities. Alex has been awarded the Marquette Student Employee of the Year last year for Marquette, and Andrew was nominated by his supervisor for the UW-Madison Student Employee of the Year this past semester. So just a shout out to Kelly Kopnetsky and her IT team. They are growing future technology specialists, not just outside the classroom. They're doing good things there, and I thought it was worth sharing this letter that came from a mom who happens to work in human resources. So she might know. That's it. That's all I had for the director's report there. That's it really for the night. Do you guys have any questions I can answer?
I do not. Sherry?
So I don't think they plan to send it out until February 1st. The gentleman spearheading that was the previous business manager in South Milwaukee. He is now at the Oak Creek Franklin School District. His name is Blaze Paul. He spearheaded it. Sun Prairie, a low revenue school district?
No.
So, yeah. So, Sean, thanks you for that. Okay. So,
Maybe they are low revenue.
I don't think so. I don't know if anyone.
The challenge with this type of proposal is if you take a look at our legislators, for example, each of them have several districts in their area that they represent, and they might have 1 or 2 districts that are low revenue and then several others that are higher revenue. And when they go to create a budget, they're trying to please the most people that they can. And so to give us more money and give New Berlin and Elmbrook and some of the others in Waukesha County less money, that's a tough sell for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even, as you saw through the table of contents in the biennial budget, I mean, public instruction is just a part of their responsibilities. They have corrections and highways and transportation. It's a lot of people just asking for a lot. I like to just focus our ask.
That's the idea.
On something that's very realistic. So,
Craig?
So the assumption, the budget assumption, Tom, it won't go into effect until September, is that correct? So when is the final, is that September?
So yeah, I mean, this is the timing of the school year, and when we get our budget details. I hope that the state biennial budget is done before June 30, because we're gonna finalize our budget in August and September. We adopt a final budget in October, but, I mean, that plane really kind of launches for takeoff in July, you know? So if after the fact they say, hey, your plane doesn't have that much gas, we're not giving you much funding, it's like, well, this is a little late, you know? We're trying to make plans right now, so I hope the biennial budget process isn't delayed or there's fighting from both sides. It's just wherever it lands, get it to us on time, and then we'll respond from there. But yeah, the budget assumptions is for the 23-24 school year that's coming up September 1st. Well, the fiscal year starts July 1st, but the school year starts in September. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?